You all set? All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Bob Kelly. I'm on the Historic Advisory Committee. If you ask us what our responsibilities are, is to help Babette, our town historian, with anything she needs help with. So Babette put together this program, and we're really happy to have you all here. And before I turn it over to Babette, just to let you know, it's 20-0. Okay. For anybody that cares. Babette, thank you.
I have to ask, what is 20-0?
Thanks, Bob. Before I start my program, I'd like to, today we're doing the Erie Canal, a presentation as well as an artist reception. We have the Finger Lakes watercolor painters who did beautiful Erie Canal paintings that are out in our local artist gallery area. So I'm going to introduce Larry Keefe in just a second. After my presentation, I invite you to have some cookies, or there's some little donut holes, some lemonade, and then go out and talk with the artists. They also did the barns for us last 2 years ago. We had our barns inventory done. So without further ado, I want to introduce Larry Keefe. You have to come up here because you're on TV. And Larry is the artist and the teacher for the Finger Lakes watercolor painters.
Thank you, Babette. I'm drawing a blank. I don't know what to say, other than that we started the Finger Lakes Watercolor Painters group a number of years ago, primarily from people who had taken classes that I teach at the Memorial Art Gallery in watercolor painting. And the concept was that we would do plein air outdoor painting every other week and give one another critiques and support, because that's one of the issues that you have if you're a painter, is that you're working on something, but you really don't have a sense of it until you put it in front of some other people. So that's what we do, and that's one of the big benefits of working together. So we've created a group that I would say has a lot of cohesiveness, and we've managed to put together a number of local shows, primarily about subjects that are in the Victor Finger Lakes area. And we've had a couple in the library, and we had the Barns in conjunction with the Barns Festival of Victor. And then we decided to do something to help commemorate the bicentennial of the opening of the Erie Canal. And we put together this show, which we hung at Clementine's restaurant in Fairport for, I don't know, I think it was about a month or so. And then we just moved it here because Babette had told us that she wanted to do something here. So I'd like to introduce Rory Schoenfeld, who is the person who actually stepped up and made it happen. Okay, she got all the frames. She supervised making sure that everybody was on time in terms of getting their work together. Her husband designed special hangers that were used at Clementine's on a hard-to-hang wall there. And she's been very, very instrumental in making this happen. And I really thank her. Come on up and introduce the artist, Rory. Not all of us are here, but she'll introduce the ones that are, right? And then the others.
Probably need to move this down a little bit, so you might need to move it back up. Well, I am delighted to be here, and I'm so glad that the paintings are hung, and it looks beautiful out there, and I hope you take the time to enjoy looking at them. Our artists are Dolores Rossi Farr, Laura Bender. You might stand up when I call your name if you're here, okay? Anna Borelli, Reese Katie McCree, Suzanne Demeyer, Suzanne, stand up. Amy Dodd Ennis, Lawrence E. Keefe, Jen Santoro, Leona Stone, and Rory Ann Schoenfeld. Thank you.
Thank you, and I hope everybody will stay around and chat with them. They also had done another watercolor exhibit before this one, right, Larry? Yeah, so, I mean, they're just, what do you do with them then? Do you do like an auction?
We sell them.
Oh, hopefully you sell them. All right, so today our program is about the Erie Canal and how it relates to Victor. And many of you have said to me, are you kidding me? The Erie Canal is nowhere near Victor. Well, that's true. However, there are connections. It's the 200th anniversary of the finishing of the Erie Canal. It actually finished in October of 1825. So it seems appropriate for us at this time, as well as 250 years ago was the beginning of the Revolutionary War. So we have a lot of different things to celebrate in the next few years. This one we deemed appropriate at this time because it was the end of, the Erie Canal. Not the end of the Erie Canal, I mean, the end of the building of the Erie Canal. Now, it did not actually get built through Victor. However, let's talk about the Erie Canal. It was 363 miles long, went from Albany, Hudson River, all the way to Buffalo, Lake Erie. And in the early 1800s, there were a lot of commercial interests in this country that were looking at an easier way to link the agricultural wealth of this region to other parts of the country. But it took forever to get those products from one place to another. So we have DeWitt Clinton. He was the mayor of New York City, and he became a champion for building the canal. Why? Because it definitely would benefit the port of New York City. And it would connect New York City then with the Hudson River up and across New York State and then to the west. And all he could see was money for New York State. So that was one of his goals. In 1816, the people of New York City were beginning to worry about their economy. Baltimore and Philadelphia were actually the two cities that were reaping all of the benefits of the economy. They had accessibility to the Mississippi and Ohio river systems. So it was their gateway to the West. And it was crucial for New York to get some kind of a gateway to the West if they wanted to still become an important port on the East Coast. So it was estimated that it would take 4 horses could pull 1 ton 12 miles a day. 1 ton, 12 miles a day. Speed was important because crops would disintegrate, crops would rot if they couldn't move them fast enough. So New Yorkers faced this problem, and eventually they approved in 1817 the building of the Erie Canal from Albany to Buffalo. Now think about that. Building a canal in the state of New York, 363 miles long. They didn't have machinery. It was going to be done by hand. Jesse Hawley was a flour merchant in Geneva, New York. He'd gone bankrupt after failing to find a timely way to get his flour to market. So he landed in debtor's prison. I could never figure out, if you're in debt, why they would send you to prison, because how are you going to get out of debt if you're in prison? Anyway, he was there for 20 months, and in those 20 months, he wrote essays to the Genesee Messenger under a pseudonym by the name Hercules. And Hercules made the case for an Erie Canal. He provided detailed information on the route, the costs, and the benefits. Geneva, New York. The only person I've ever talked to that's known that is Larry, and it's only because he just read a book about the Erie Canal. Anybody else knew that? I didn't have a clue before I started doing research. So DeWitt Clinton had been on this commission for the canal for a long time, and he got to know the author of Hawley, and he backed Hawley. He read all of his information, and he thought, we need this canal. We're going to do it. And he did eventually get the legislature, as I said before, to pass it in 1817. He envisioned a waterway that would cut transportation costs, encourage westward expansion, and promote trade, of which we all know now it did exactly that. So construction was started between Utica and Rome on July 4th, 1817. Of course it was going to be July 4th, right? There were ceremonies outside the village of Rome on Independence Day. Dignitaries and local citizens assembled at sunrise to attend the start of the construction. Judge Joshua Hathaway was a veteran of 2 American wars. He spoke and he began the excavation. There was another judge who was the first contractor. He turned the first shovel. Cannon boomed and the canal became designated as Clinton's Folly. Some other people called it Clinton's Ditch. There's always going to be people that are on one side or the other. These people obviously thought it was just a waste of money for New York to be doing this. Benjamin Wright was called the father of American engineering. He supervised the construction of the section between Utica and the Seneca River. So they started in the middle of the state. They didn't start at either end. They started in the middle. The first year, 15 miles were constructed. The first year, 15 miles, and we've got 363 to go. But by the next year, 98-mile section was completed. So they either had better ways of doing things, more workers. We'll see. All right, Rochesterville. This is a picture of Rochesterville. It was the settlement laid out in 1811, which was after Victor became a town. So it was Rochester. So just to be clear, Rochester, and I will also tell you Canandaigua, became towns, settlements after Victor. It was Rochesterville, or Rochester, was laid out on a 100-acre plot of land along the Genesee River. In 1811, Rochester started selling plots of new land, and they called it Rochesterville, named after Nathaniel Rochester, because everybody names the place where they settle after themselves, right? In 1812, he moved his family to Rochesterville and joined several other settlers, and they chartered the town in 1817. The city of Rochester was chartered in 1834. In 1817, when the canal was just being built, Rochesterville had about 1,000 inhabitants. By the time the canal had finished, they were up to 4,000. I'm just giving you I'm crescendoing to how Victor is part of this, but we'll get there. To cross over the Genesee River, they needed to build an aqueduct. This was the first aqueduct to carry the Erie Canal over the Genesee River, and it was started in the fall of 1821 and ended in the fall of 1823. It took 2 years. It was 802 feet long, 17 feet wide, and had 11 arches. It was one of the longest stone structures in the world. And as Rochester began to prosper and grow, so did one of Victor's businessmen. Many of you have heard me talk about William Bushnell in the past. He was the first permanent merchant to begin business in Victor. He was here in 1808. So Victor was settled in 1788. He was here 20 years later. He also was the postmaster of Victor for 20 years. And he was really enthused about the survey of the canal, because originally the canal was supposed to go through the village of Victor. News to me, but that's what the documents say. Unfortunately, the unstable valley of the Irondequoit Creek between Victor and Fishers and Railroad Mills made it difficult. So Victor did not get the canal through it. It went through a more northerly route. So the industrious Mr. Bushnell, not to be dismayed, he was a sharp-witted businessman. He and 2 other partners, Lyman and Wilmarth, purchased 100 acres of land in 1823, 7 miles north of the village of Victor. The men enlarged the boat basin, built a yard to construct canal boats, a warehouse, a distillery, and a general store. The general store was run by Cyrus Wilmarth, who was a Victorite. They ran the stagecoach in at the top of Boughton Hill, the Wilmarites, right next to, it's the brick building. It's next to Ganondagan, right. The place that these businessmen bought was originally called Hartwell's Basin. But later it became called Bushnell's Basin because of Mr. Bushnell. He retired at the age of 53, a very wealthy man. As early canal passengers described his travels here this is an 1832 issue of a magazine. We lodged that night at Palmyra, and the next morning we arrived at Hartwell's, it's spelled wrong, Basin in Pittsford, 8 miles from Rochester, where the present navigation of the canal terminated. So in 1822, it had not gotten farther than Rochester. You all know this house on Maple Avenue. If you don't, it's the only brick building on our Maple Avenue. And that is a gorgeous home that Mr. Bushnell was able to build for his daughter as a wedding present. It was designed by the Rochester architect Merwin Austin, architects Merwin Austin and A.J. Warner. Anybody know this building? Gould Richardson moved his family from Victor to Bushnell's Basin in 1828 to operate an establishment which is now Richardson's Inn. Richardson's was among the most well-known of the canal taverns in the area. Horses and mules were quartered under the porches, and regular travelers, if they could afford it, would stay with the tavern keeper. Claudius Victor Boughton, after Victor is named, we've laughed about this in the past. They wanted to name Victor after him because he was a hero of the War of 1812, but apparently they thought Victor sounded better than Claudius, so they named the town Victor. But his name is Claudius Victor Boughton. So he was promoted to the rank of major in 1815 for his outstanding service, and that's why he was given a service award for his involvement in the War of 1812. He'd been a tavern keeper in Victor before he went off to war, and then he also served, believe it or not, in the state legislature for 3 terms. But what would be his connection to the Erie Canal? Well, you got to be in the know to do things, apparently. In 1822, he became a construction contractor on the Erie Canal near Lockport. And then after he was done with Lockport, he actually went back to Phelps. And Phelps is where he ran this tavern. So we talked a little bit about, they only did such a short distance the first year, but then as the second year progressed, they did a little bit more. And the main reason was because of the immigrants that they were able to get, mainly from Ireland. They dug 4 foot deep, 40 feet wide, and 363 miles, a trench using picks and shovels. Picks and shovels, that's all they did. Risks were not only construction accidents, but there was malaria and other mysterious diseases. Some workers found that the territory was harsh. One writing to his family back home in 1818, "The land is a desolate wilderness. I beg all of my old neighbors not to think of coming here." The biggest hurdle was the elevation. Lake Erie was more than 570 feet above sea level. 570 feet. They're building a canal. You think, canal, it's flat. You go on the canal, you think it's flat until you get to the locks. The Hudson River, where the other end was 16.5 feet above sea level. So the locks, which could raise and lower the canal boats, were devised. As the boat floats in, the doors close, water's piped in, the boat goes up, the doors on the other end are open, and the boat is on its journey on that side. But Lockport, New York caused a significant problem. The lock is called the Flight of Five Locks. They were crucial for navigating the Niagara Escarpment. It's a stone foundation, rock foundation. These locks, originally built in 1825, were later replaced by larger locks in 1918, but they're still in use today. They were designed by Nathan Roberts, and it's a unique engineering solution for the time. They consisted of 5 double-chambered locks, allowing boats to ascend or descend one lock at a time. The Victor Herald reported years after the event that in 1825, 2 men from Bloomfield decided they wanted to build a canal boat. On June 5th, 1825, it was loaded in 3 ox carts and driven by 8 oxen teams through East Bloomfield, through Victor, and then on to Bushnell's Basin, where it could be launched. So technically, we can say that a canal boat went through Victor. I'm using poetic license, right? Now, you know, Brigham Young was also a resident of Victor and Mendon. He was a Mormon, a carpenter. He did carpentry work on houses in the Fishers area, but he also worked on the Erie Canal. An invoice from 1825 shows that he was paid $200, which I think is a pretty good amount of money, to paint Erie Canal lock houses. See the lock house there on the right. I was going to have the picture of the invoice, but couldn't get it small enough, sorry. With the canal slashing the cost of freight, remember we said one of the goals of the governor was to have a quicker way to get goods across the state, have it be cheaper, and have a way for them to get to the west, the wilderness in the west. So with the cost slashing, the cost of freight slashing from Albany to Buffalo, it slashed by about 90% by using the canal. So therefore, places like Victor Roller Mills, which is who made flour, could therefore get their supply of flour to market quicker and 90% cheaper. Where wheat had, this is also one kind of flour that the Victor Flour Mill made. One kind where wheat had previously been like just a family farm would grow wheat for their flour. Now they were beginning to need to grow more wheat. They could grow more wheat and sell it for more profit by using the Erie Canal. As with the family orchard now, it became a way to get more product to market. Apples were very abundant in Victor, and they were dried to go to market. Transporting them on the canal became a big business. The Tishers, there's a picture on the top left. The Tishers lived just south of Valentine Road. This is a picture of some people, apple workers who had been picking apples and putting them in a drying shed. And on the right side, on the corner of Dryer Road and School Road, used to be called Applejack Mill. It was an apple cider mill. As more crops were being harvested, more and more advanced machinery was needed. So a Victor resident by the name of Rufus Humphrey, a farmer and a machinist, made a major advance by inventing the first cylinder made of staves and teeth for threshing the wheat, which means taking the grain away from the plant. He patented the invention in 1830. This is a picture of what it might have looked like, but this is the time when people are starting now to, I looked at the patents for just 1830, there were hundreds, because now people want to make better machinery so they can grow more and they can send it off to market and they can make more money. So the canal opened on October 26th, 1825, and Governor Clinton was aboard the Seneca Chief, which was the packet boat there, and a container of water he had from Lake Erie, and they went all the way down to the edge of the Atlantic Ocean in the New York harbor, and then the governor poured that water into the Atlantic Ocean, symbolically joining the three entities. Now, as we celebrate our local artists today, I was able to find some art as well that's currently at the Memorial Art Gallery. And I thought this would be a nice way to blend in what our local artists have done with what is on display at the Memorial Art Gallery. This is called Pittsford on the Erie Canal by George Harvey. Do any of you know that person, that artist? You know the paint. The Aqueduct at Broad Street Bridge in Rochester by Colin Campbell Cooper. Are they all watercolors, Larry, or are they oils? Oils. The Canal Boat by George Leonard Hurdle. It's got to be a watercolor, right? Here's the Canal from Court Street by George Leonard Hurdle. A Waylock on the Erie Canal in Rochester, New York by Seth C. Jones. And the canal still is going strong. It may not be used for commercial access, but it certainly is used by many, many people recreationally. After 200 years, certainly has been a success, and we want to congratulate it on its 200th birthday. It's some of the places where I got my information from, and thank you for coming to hear about the Erie Canal and how it's related to Victor. Sometimes a little bit of a stretch, but it was fun, right? Yes. Thank you. So have some cookies and lemonade, and artists, please go out in the hall and so people can come talk to you about your wonderful paintings. Thank you.